Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining our webcast today to learn about best practices for marketing on LinkedIn. My name is Keith Richey. I'm a Director of Global Marketing here at LinkedIn, and I'm excited to speak with you today, marketer to marketer, about using LinkedIn to achieve your goals, whether they are brand building objectives or lead gen objectives. And we're going to be looking at best practices for both of those macro objectives, as well as case study examples from a variety of companies, including medium-sized businesses and large enterprises. And we're going to wrap up today where I'll share some tips and tricks for how my team has been using LinkedIn to meet the demands of the evolving consumer and customer marketplace. So that's where I'm going to start, actually, with a quick recap of how we're seeing consumer behavior evolving. The meat of the presentation is the best practices. And then, as I mentioned, we'll close out with sharing some tips and tricks from how my team's using LinkedIn. So the consumer evolution I'm referring to is related to the fact that the buyer behavior has changed forever. Now, everyone is on 24/7, primarily because we now have an incredibly powerful computer in our pockets, and we can take it with us anywhere, and we can connect anywhere. So this creates pretty major challenges for brands to build their brand and stay top of mind and influence the purchase decision, because consumers have more control than ever of where they consume, when they consume, and how they consume information, and from whom they're consuming the information. And this leads to the dynamic where a buyer is up to 90% through the buying cycle, and this is data from Forrester, and it relates to B2B, but the same general case is true for B2C as well. The buyer's up to 90% through the buying cycle before they make direct contact to start a sales conversation with a brand. And they're able to complete all the preliminary research and get very far through the buying cycle because they're empowered, because they're always on, because they're always connected, and there's this enormous volume of information and content available for them online and on their mobile devices. So they can be really self-directed in figuring out what to buy and how to buy it. And they don't have to make that direct contact until they're already at the point of making the decision. And this is a real challenge for brands, because if you're not present in the first 90% before they make direct contact, it's very, very hard to be in the consideration set when they're only 10% away from making the final decision. So if you don't have a way of being part of the conversation in this first 90%, you run the risk of being left out. And there's a couple good ways of getting into that conversation in the first 90%. Mobile is key because it's really now the center of consumers' lives. Very recently, LinkedIn passed our quote-unquote mobile moment, where now 50% of our visitors are coming to LinkedIn on a mobile device. And so we've been approaching that 50% number for every quarter, getting closer and closer to it. And then this past quarter, we crossed that 50% threshold. So that's our mobile moment, and that proves mobile being at the center of consumers' lives. And what this chart shows is a deeper dive into that using our own data. So you see three lines here, and the top line on the right-hand side, the blue line, represents use of tablets by LinkedIn members to access LinkedIn through our tablet app by time of day. And then the purple line is mobile, and then the red line is laptop or desktop. And so you see the patterns where mobile, the purple, is always on all day long. So it ramps up in the morning, and then it's a steady purple line across throughout the day. Whereas desktop, earlier use in the morning, and then it tails off as people leave work at the end of the day. And tablet comes in strong in the evening when people are on their couch probably watching TV after dinner and co-viewing with their browser in hand. And if you stack or add the purple and the blue together, consider both of those mobile, you have a really, really strong mobile usage of LinkedIn, and it really does make it the center of the consumer's lives. And so being on mobile and having mobile-friendly content and having mobile advertising as a brand is a great way to be part of that early 90% of the buying cycle before a consumer reaches out for direct contact. And the other thing is content. So having valuable content that adds to your consumer or customer's knowledge base and helps them solve a real problem is more effective nowadays than traditional advertising. And so I'm going to share more as we get into LinkedIn best practices for how to use LinkedIn for content marketing. And so we look at these trends and this evolution of the customer or the consumer, and we've identified that there are really 3 new keys to success. You have to be accurate, be helpful, and be everywhere. So being accurate is knowing that you're reaching the right person and being confident that they are who they say they are. That's critical. It's always been a key part of marketing, but it was in the past part art, part science, and I'll share more about how LinkedIn's data helps marketers be accurate. So adding more science than art. Then being helpful, this is what I mentioned about helping the consumer, the customer, solve one of their problems or get to one of their goals. And sharing content is the way that we've seen brands be really effective on LinkedIn and being helpful. And finally, be everywhere. It doesn't just mean be everywhere geographically, but it means be on every device and in every feed where your customer consumers investing their time. So that's our perspective on the challenges that marketers face, and now we'll transition to talking about best practices for both branding and lead gen, and using case examples to show how medium and enterprise companies are using LinkedIn to help achieve their objectives. And we're going to start with the brand building side and then move to the lead gen. So we see that there's 3 main best practices to building brand on LinkedIn. First, finding your audience, then shaping perception, starting with building awareness, if that's an objective you need first to cover. But then once you've built that awareness, develop those strong associations that you want people to have with your brand and shape their perception of your brand. And finally, establish trust by sharing content in a steady stream rather than isolated campaigns that dip in and out of the market. So I'm going to touch on each one of these and then talk through a couple of examples of each. So let's start with finding your audience. On LinkedIn, our members share a lot of information about themselves because they're putting their professional profile on display. They're holding themselves up for the world to see. And this starts with their identity. So imagine you want to reach a small business owner who lives in Dallas, or you want to reach small business owners. This one is named James. He happens to live in Dallas, and he's a heavy user of mobile and iPad. And we know that because of the behavior patterns we see on our site. Next, James has his network. He's got 500 plus connections, so he's heavily connected. He's a member of groups about entrepreneurship because he's a small business owner, and that gives him knowledge and helps him build his network as well. And then he's sharing and consuming content on a daily basis on LinkedIn to help further his knowledge and help him be great at his job of running a small business. So together, identity, network, and knowledge form our value propositions to our members. And that also, those dimensions, identity, network, knowledge, give us the data set that we use to accurately target the members. So let's say you want to reach small business owners like James. Well, the good news is there are 330 million professionals just like him. They're not all small business owners, but they all have profile data that tells us exactly who they are and how they're engaged on the site, what devices they're using, what groups they belong to, and many, many other targeting parameters. And you can reach them on LinkedIn. And because it's their profile information, they're holding up their professional identity to the world, you can be confident that they are who they say they are. So here's my favorite targeting case on LinkedIn. Cathay Pacific, airline based in Asia, but has a global footprint in terms of the routes that they fly, and they wanted to reach people who were likely candidates for flying Cathay Pacific on some new routes that they were opening up. So for them, they had two really key targeting parameters. They needed to target business professionals who were flying for business, flying frequently, and likely to be wanting a business class ticket. So they wanted senior level professionals. And they also wanted people who lived in certain geographies, because geography was very important to this campaign. They're opening up new routes. They're not reintroducing Cathay Pacific or having a whole global campaign about it. This was very targeted to help them drive business for specific new routes that they were flying. And so based on that composite information we have on our members, they were able to pinpoint the targeting to get just to the right people and let them know through the campaign about these new routes. And so you see the quote here from their VP of marketing for the Americas region. They were really pleased with the results and their ability to target just the right professionals on LinkedIn. So that's the find your audience piece. Once you've found your audience, now it's time to shape their perception. This could start with building awareness, but that's only the first step. And from there, you need to make sure you're cementing the right perceptions and the right associations for your brand. You can use display ads, but even more importantly, we're seeing content ads be a great perception driver, as well as company updates and sponsored updates. And I'm going to talk through some of those products. So with standard display ads, you're reaching the right audience at the right time in this very measurable medium. So the blue dashed border boxes are highlighting where the display ads appear on the page. And you can target them, just like the Cathay Pacific example, with precision. And you're driving the high quality professional audience on LinkedIn to your destination that you're taking them to from the ad. So here's an example where American Express is looking to convert small business owners to their business card, so the Business Gold Rewards card from American Express Open. So they're taking the high quality professional audience and they're converting them into card holders. Here's another example. That was an enterprise example. This one is a medium-sized company, Tech Systems. They're in the technology staffing world, so they're providing tech workers to companies that need them. There's huge demand for tech workers, but it's also a very competitive business. And I really like this campaign as an example because they had a dual objective. So I put this in the brand building section because that was the primary objective. They needed to build awareness of Tech Systems, but they also had a lead gen objective. So they wanted to do both brand building and driving awareness, but then make sure that converted through their funnel into targeted leads. So they had a really high click-through rate for branding ads as a result, and that meant that they were able to schedule a number of qualified meetings as a result of the campaign. So they're really helping drive the business through the precision targeting that they can do on LinkedIn and reaching the professional audience that matters to them, CIOs and senior IT executives, and setting up the meetings that were leading to the new deals for staffing. So the third best practice here for building the brand is all about establishing trust. And so, as I mentioned before, with the always-on consumer and the 90% through the buying cycle dynamic, it's no longer sufficient to have a periodic campaign where you're dipping in and out of the market with a relatively static message over time. It's still important to have your branding campaigns, but you need to have a steady stream of content that's ideally in the feed where people are already spending their time. And that's in the service of establishing trust for your brand. So showing them that you can actually help them achieve whatever their goal is that your business relates to. And company updates and sponsored updates are a great way of doing that on LinkedIn. So it all starts for most companies with the company page. And so here's an example of a company page from HubSpot. It's their destination to, just like we have the member profile, this is another way of thinking of this is it's the company profile. It's their company identity that they're showcasing to the world. And they're featuring information about their products and services, and they're sharing content. And HubSpot happens to be they're a medium-sized company, and they specialize in helping SMBs market better. So they themselves are a great content marketer, and they're sharing great content, and they're also sharing information about opportunities to work with them. So this company page really serves dual purposes, and in most cases that's true. For today, we're just going to talk about the marketing side of the company page and not the recruiting and career side. But there's definitely the ability to have your company page do both. So HubSpot sharing great content and getting a lot of engagement from their followers. And here's an example of a completely different type of page on LinkedIn. So first, I'm just going to tease this movie here, Taken 3 with Liam Neeson. For those of you who've seen any of the previous Takens or have seen the trailer for the new Taken 3, Liam Neeson plays a character who has, quote unquote, a particular set of skills. And you can tell by the picture, if you're not familiar with the movie, those skills are not necessarily skills commonly found on LinkedIn profiles, because he's carrying a gun, and it's a PG-13 movie, so family friendly still. But Liam Neeson plays a pretty ruthless guy in this movie with a good cause. And so Fox, actually, the studio, they created what's called a showcase page. And so a showcase page is a dedicated page for particular aspects of your business that have their own message or their own unique audience to reach. And they are linked to your overall company page, but showcase pages enable you to highlight something unique or specific about your business. Like if you have multiple business units, you might want to have multiple showcase pages underneath your overall company page. So Microsoft, for example, would do that. HP would be another example. And if you have a particular campaign coming out, and you want to have a lot of content related to the campaign, you can build a dedicated showcase page to that. And so this Taken showcase page is an example. So you have Liam Neeson here playing his character Brian Mills, and Fox is actually running a contest on LinkedIn where Liam Neeson, in character as Brian Mills, will endorse you for a particular set of skills, and create a video endorsement that you can then share with your network. So that's a contest. You guys can go check out the Taken 3 showcase page and check that out. So showcase pages enable you to focus in on a specific audience or a specific aspect of your business. I thought it'd be fun to highlight a Hollywood movie because that's not your everyday showcase page. And then from these pages, where the best practice really kicks into high gear is you can sponsor content. And so you're not limited just to the people who are following your page. You can actually target anyone on LinkedIn with your content by sponsoring it. So this is especially important if your company is just getting started on LinkedIn and you don't yet have a big following for your company page. You might not be able to reach that many people if you're just posting through your company page, and you're just sharing content organically that way. So you can sponsor that content and put it in the feed of any of the LinkedIn members, and you can put it in the feed on any device. So one piece of content goes seamlessly across devices. The example here you see from Lattice Engine's they have content on the iPad, and then it would also cascade to the desktop, and then on the right-hand side to the mobile phone. And so that's the example of content flowing seamlessly across devices. And we've seen sponsored updates be an incredibly effective driver of both shaping a brand perception and building the brand, and generating leads. So we're going to come back to sponsored updates when we talk about the lead gen best practices. But as I was mentioning before, being helpful, sharing content, and putting it in the feed, sponsored updates is the way to do that to get reach on LinkedIn in a targeted way. So here's the case study more built out for Adobe, where they were one of the pilot customers of sponsored updates when it launched maybe a year and a half ago. And they saw great results and have been a customer ever since. They had a pretty unique branding challenge. Everyone in marketing and design knows Adobe for their creative suite. So they're a household name, and they have been for a couple of decades because of their products like Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop. But that market isn't growing that much. The real growth is in digital marketing. And they had a great set of solutions that help digital marketers be more effective, but they didn't have high awareness for that new set of solutions. They pivoted their whole company to be solution providers for digital marketers, but their legacy as the great creative suite software company was in a way holding them back. And so they turn to sponsored updates as a way to reach the right professionals and shape their perceptions about what the Adobe brand had transformed into and what it could do for digital marketers. And so we did a brand uplift study following the campaign. We interviewed in a quantitative survey people who were exposed to the campaign and people who were not exposed. And you see here these two bullets about the uplift. Those who were exposed were 50% more likely to agree that Adobe was shaping the future of digital marketing, and 79% more likely to agree that Adobe can help them optimize their media spend. And these are two elements of the Adobe brand and the Adobe offering that people had relatively low awareness of at the start. But you see the power of sharing content in the feed. Adobe wasn't just putting straight ads in the feed, they were sharing thought leadership articles about digital marketing trends and showcasing their knowledge at the forefront of that industry. And so the combination of sponsoring the updates to the right professionals and sharing helpful content that helps people achieve whatever objective they have drove this uplift in the brand perception. So a very powerful result for Adobe. So that's the brand building side. Let's now talk about best practices for generating leads. So you've gotten your upper funnel under control, and you're doing a good job with the brand perception component, and now you want to make sure you're driving that audience and converting them into leads so that your sales team or your e-commerce site, if you're a B2C business, can benefit from the converted leads. So again, it starts with finding your audience, and then establishing trust with this stream of content, and finally being personal and using the precision targeting and the accurate targeting on LinkedIn to speak in a personal way to the member. Oh, and I should also mention here, backing up one slide, that in both the brand building best practices and the lead gen best practices, LinkedIn has the data available to enable you to measure and optimize the campaigns at every stage. So you're not just launching and leaving, you're actually able to do the real-time adjustment to make sure your campaigns perform the way you want them to. So staying here for just one more second, actually, we'd already discussed the targeting parameters and company updates and sponsored updates, so I'm not going to go back through those products. I'm just going to highlight sponsored Inmail, and then we'll talk about a couple of case studies, one that does a deep dive on a company that used sponsored Inmail to drive leads, and another one that is a company using a combination of the products we've discussed to power even more effective marketing on LinkedIn. So Inmail is a way to get into the member's inbox, but not get hung up in their spam filter of their personal or their corporate email. And so Inmail appears in the LinkedIn product in the inbox. Many of you, I'm sure, are getting a lot of mail in your regular inboxes, but you probably get more selective Inmail messages, and therefore the standout of the messages is much higher, and that's because we have a 60-day buffer where one member will only get one sponsored Inmail message every 60 days. So there's a lot of uniqueness built into the product that makes sure the sponsored message stands out. So here's an example from Box, and they're inviting people to an event. So they're driving leads for a physical event, and there's a very clear call to action and a really nice banner on the right-hand side. And then there's some information about Box at the bottom in case people aren't familiar and this is the first time they're hearing about Box. They can learn more about them on LinkedIn. And that response button is customizable. So where it says register now, you can have that say whatever you want. So any CTA, and if you've done the A/B testing to find the best CTA that works for you, that's the CTA you can use in your sponsored email. So here's an example from Hearsay Social. They're a social media management company, and they needed to reach the senior decision makers in marketing and set up qualified meetings with their sales team. So looking to generate leads for Hearsay. And they got really terrific open rates versus the average email drop, 29%, and a really high 23% click-through rate. So these performance metrics are way above the average for email, and that's a key part of the value of sponsored email. So they have the ability to reach the LinkedIn members at scale and reach the right professionals for them, you see from this quote, but also get really high performance. They're gaining scale, but they're not sacrificing performance. So let's talk about putting it all together. How are you maximizing your effectiveness and your reach across LinkedIn? You can combine a display campaign with sponsored updates and Inmail. So Inmail is getting you into the inbox both on desktop and mobile. It flows seamlessly across. I hadn't mentioned that before, but that's an important thing to call out. The display campaigns are giving you that right rail reach on the desktop, and then sponsored updates sharing helpful content across devices. So BI Worldwide, they're an engagement marketing agency, and they're a medium-sized business, and we have a campaign example from them where they were putting it all together with display, Inmail, and sponsored updates, and the whole was greater than the sum of the parts because they're using them in a complementary way. They're looking to generate leads, so they had a very clear lead gen objective, but again, they weren't a household name, so they needed to do some upfront awareness building, and that's where they're using their display campaign. And then they're also using display to drive leads, so they have a dual objective there, supplementing it with Inmail and sponsored updates. And so you see that 26% of new leads for their business in the period of time when the campaign ran came from the display ads, and 6% came from the updates. So another chunk came from Inmail as well, and you tally that up, and you've got almost half of their leads coming from this campaign during that period. So very powerful channel for them when they put the combo together. So those are the best practices for today. I just want to highlight something exciting that's going to be coming up. So earlier this year, LinkedIn acquired Bizzo. They're experts in B2B marketing and targeting professionals online. And so they have a new offering called Bizzo Multi-Channel Nurture, and they're a pioneer in this category of multi-channel nurture, which takes retargeting to a whole other level and makes it much more effective. And so we acquired Bizzo, and now we're in the process of integrating with them, and we're going to be launching some exciting new products in 2015. And we're excited for what 2015 holds with this combination of LinkedIn plus Bizzo. And together, we aspire to be the most effective platform for marketers to reach audiences, nurture their prospects, and ultimately acquire customers. So keep your eye out for the LinkedIn Bizzo combo coming at you in 2015. So that's the best practices section, and now zoom in one level deeper and talk about my marketing team here at LinkedIn and how we've responded to the consumer/customer evolution and leverage LinkedIn best practices to generate more effective marketing ourselves. So for us, it starts with content, and a couple years ago, I built our content marketing team and hired some amazing content marketers, one from Marketo, one from Coca-Cola, and Bizzo brought their own content marketers over. And so now we have an awesome content marketing team, and they're putting our blog in the center of the strategy, and that's where we're publishing content to the blog every day, and even on some weekends, because the 24/7 customer never really stops, never takes a break. Individual people take breaks, of course, but in aggregate, it never sleeps. So we have the blog, and it's connected to our other efforts, and it's really right in the center. So we'll use our blog to promote upcoming events where we're either sponsoring or attending, and also then to recap and capture content from those events and share it back out. So it gives us a great channel through which to distribute the impact and power of the event even more broadly. Social and online, that's a big distribution channel for us, and we're distributing content from the blog and driving traffic to our site from the blog. And then sponsored updates has become one of our primary lead drivers, and it's one of the ways we're engaging most with our audience. And so our blog content makes for awesome sponsored updates content. So this is a sort of quick view of our constellation, and I'll share with you what's been helpful for us and what's helped us up-level the blog, focusing on the relevance, variety, and the frequency. So making sure that we always, with every post, ask the question, what's in it for the marketer? That's the core audience for our blog, and we want to make sure there's value in every post for marketers, and we want to make sure that the value is front and center, and it's really obvious from the first paragraph, if you're a marketer, why you should be reading it. And so you see here on the right-hand side, there's an example blog post that we published about the blogging food groups, and this gets into variety. So there's basically a diet, quote unquote, for your blog that makes sense. And there's 5 different food groups. I'm not going to go into all of them, but for example, you've got your roast content, and that's really, really meaty subjects, no pun intended with meaty, that require some time to discuss and some time to unpack. And you can get a lot of information packed into one blog post that can be the definitive publication on that subject. And so that's an example of roast content. Then you've got your spinach content, and this is how-to content would be a great example of spinach content, where it's really good for you, but you might not necessarily enjoy eating it. I happen to like spinach, and I feel like it's getting somewhat of a bad name in the food group analogy, but not everyone likes spinach, and I get that. So an example of how to use sponsored updates for generating leads, it's spinach content, because it's not necessarily the most fun content to consume or doesn't taste the greatest, but it's definitely going to help you and keep your marketing healthy. I think I'm sort of stretching the analogy here, but you get the idea. And then another example is Tabasco content. So that's another one of the blogging food groups. And that's when you want to spice things up, take a provocative stance that really gets the community talking and gets people to take sides. And there's a lot of content like this. And so the Tabasco strategy has been, well adopted in the industry, but it's still really effective. So with content, we talked about our blog being at the center, and another big strategy for us has been investing in what we call big rock content. So think about a big rock rolling down a hill. It's gathering a ton of momentum, and everyone needs to take note of this big rock. So that's what we mean when we talk about big rock content. And so our biggest rock of 2014 was we published the definitive guide to using LinkedIn as a marketer. We called it the Sophisticated Marketer's Guide. And we were saying sophisticated with sort of a wink and a nod, hearkening back to the Mad Men era that, and you see from the design here, that's very popular now, but then also using the word sophisticated as kind of a tongue-in-cheek play to distinguish the professional platform LinkedIn from our more social competitors. So the marketing here happens to be a little bit more sophisticated because of the audience and the way they're engaging. And so this big rock was the guide to using LinkedIn for marketing, fully comprehensive. It talked about, every which way you could use LinkedIn for marketing, and it detailed our product set and our overall value to marketers. And it drove, because we put it behind a gate, so it's gated content, it drove 50% of all the inquiries we got in Q1, and then 40% in Q2, and then 35% in Q3, and it's actually holding steady at around 35% for Q4. So this has been a great big rock piece of content for us. It's been powering a lot of our lead gen in the year. I mentioned showcase pages earlier with the example of Liam Neeson and Taken 3. So we don't have anything quite as blockbuster as that, but we do have our own showcase page for LinkedIn Marketing Solutions. And it's all about inspiring marketers. And so we're using that as our key content hub. And that's, we're sharing the blog content, we're promoting our Big Rock content, and it's a great way for us to, attract a following of people who are interested in LinkedIn Marketing Solutions. We have more than 17,000 now, but also then we can sponsor updates from our showcase page and reach people as LinkedIn Marketing Solutions, any professional on LinkedIn that we want to target. And from that showcase page, we're sharing these sponsored updates, and they're driving tremendous results. Really high engagement, driving traffic to our channels, and for when we have a lead gen objective, they're driving high quality leads. We're also using InMails when we need to personalize our content and have really targeted messages. So here are two examples, one from when we introduced sponsored updates in about 18 months ago, and another one where we're showcasing a customer success. Sure, they're an audio company based in the UK, and so we were geo-targeting this sponsored update. They were using sponsored updates, and it was a case study about sponsored updates, but we were geo-targeting this InMail just to customers in Europe because it was about a UK company. So with InMail, you can do a lot of that geo-targeting just as you can with any of our products, but it's particularly good for lead gen as well. So wrapping up, what we found the keys to our success are the same keys to success that we're recommending for marketers on LinkedIn: being accurate, being helpful, and being everywhere. So finding the right people, being confident that you're reaching them and that they're who they say they are, being helpful, helping them achieve their objectives, sharing content with them, and then being everywhere, not just geographically, but also on every device. So with that, I'm happy to take a few questions. We have a little bit of time for that. And those of you who've been submitting questions through the WebEx, thank you very, very much. Thanks everyone for attending, and I'll crank through as many of these questions as I can in the next 10 minutes before we wrap. So I'm just going to read a couple here and start picking ones to answer, so give me just a minute. So a couple questions about some pricing aspects, and I'll answer a couple of these here. First question is about the text ad. Is it only available for the premium solution? And the answer is no. So we also have self-serve ads, and they are available. You can just buy directly through a credit card or set up a PO if you want to buy in bigger volume. But you can do a very small test to start and just use your credit card. And if you're the business owner, you can pay that bill, or if you're, you can expense it to your company if you're not the business owner. And that's the self-serve solution. So if you go to LinkedIn text ads, you can buy text ads without buying through the field team. So without getting the premium solution. So in short, text ads also available self-serve. And then another question about pricing. So does it cost anything to sponsor content? So the answer is yes. And the slightly longer answer is yes, it costs to sponsor content, but it's an auction. And so you get to set your bid and publish the content that you want to sponsor. And then there's an algorithm that matches, or it doesn't match, sorry. It determines who wins the auction based on a combination of the price of the bid and also, you know, who else is bidding in the auction, so what the competitive submissions for prices are, competitive bids. And then it looks at the relevance of the piece of content. And so it'll send the content out to a few people and see what the engagement rate is. And for example, if you want to promote and sponsor content that ends up being a little bit less relevant, you have to bid higher in order to win in the auction with the algorithm. So yes, there is a cost, but it's variable depending on how competitive the audience you want to reach is in terms of how many other companies want to reach them. And then it's also based on a combination of how relevant your content is. So it's not just your bid price alone. And therefore, if you have really, really compelling content and you're looking to reach a audience that isn't necessarily that much in high demand on LinkedIn, then the cost could actually be relatively low if you have great content and the audience isn't that much in demand. If you're trying to reach a very in-demand audience and the content isn't that engaging, then you'll have a harder time winning the auction. And then it does not cost anything to share organic content. So if you just post from your company page or from a showcase page and you're posting just to your followers, that doesn't cost anything. And your followers are going to share, if it's relevant content, they're going to like it, comment on it, and share it. And then those actions propel that content further into the feeds of their network. And so you're getting a viral boost from that. So no price for sharing organic content. Yes, there is an auction for sponsored content. Let's see. Okay. Then there's a question about targeting, title or education for Inmail. And yes, those are both standard targeting parameters for our advertising products. So you can target by title and you can target by education. And there are many other facets like industry, geography. You can even target by company for a list of companies up to a certain size. And you can target by the groups people join. Some of these targeting parameters are only available through premium solutions, but a lot of them are available on self-serve. So pretty much if you can think of it, you can target it. So there's a question about then right rail ads on the desktop and how they manifest themselves via mobile. And the short answer here is they don't appear on mobile. And the longer answer is sponsored updates appear seamlessly on desktop, mobile, and tablet. And so that is if you're looking to reach mobile, that is the channel. Sponsored updates is how you can do it. You can also use Inmail to reach mobile because Inmail goes to the desktop and to mobile. So you have two ways, sponsored updates and Inmail, of getting into the mobile device. We've been very intentional about not putting the right rail advertising on mobile because it's not a members first experience. We've all seen right rail ads on mobile, and it's not a format or a technology that's very compelling for our individual members. So that's, we made a conscious decision to keep the right rail on the desktop only. Okay. All right, we have a question about best practices getting content in front of the right audience, where the question is, I've observed the best registration rates occur from white papers, and what about articles with a CTA? And so I'll share our experience here. because I'm closest to that. And I know also this is an experience that our customers share as well. So white papers, if you're in the technology industry or if you're in finance, are obviously a very popular format. And I think if you're in those categories or in those industries, you'll want to use a mix of white papers in your content. But what we found working really well, in addition to white papers, and in some cases even more than white papers, are what we would call snackable content. And so this is content that's very easy to consume. It's lighter weight, and it can be a good teaser for a more robust conversation. And so, a short article or even an infographic or just like a short one-pager with a point of view, some of those you can gate if there's enough value there. Others you want to leave ungated, and it can be more top-of-the-funnel content. And you really need a mix. So it's not about one silver bullet, but it's about having that mix of content by life cycle for your target. So you have people who are in your upper funnel and they're just getting familiar, and you probably want to leave a lot of that content ungated. Then you have people who are in the middle of the funnel and they're really considering you versus your competitors. You can have gated content because that'll lead to a sales conversation. It'll also help deepen their knowledge and understanding of your company. And then you have the real bottom funnel content, which is the how-to content for people who are already customers. So you want to make sure to have a mix across those. And white papers definitely play a role in that mix, but also the snackable content that's really lightweight, some of which can be gated and some of which can be ungated. Okay, time for a couple more questions. Let's see. Can you send targeted email messages from company pages? So the answer here is no. You can send only updates from company pages, but your targeted email comes from your company. So you're not using the company page interface to send emails. You're speaking with a member of our account services team to set up your email campaign. But the appearance of it appears as if it is coming, and because it is, it's coming from your company, and that's the way it looks. Okay. Oh, we have some more questions. Okay. Yeah. So, question about geography: is this applicable to most countries or U.S. centric? And so I'll just answer this for the general case because I'm not sure if that was referring to a specific slide or a specific product, but 60% and more of our members are located outside of the U.S. And so we have 330 million members, and we have, I think, almost 200 million or more than 200 million are outside the U.S. So right around that 200 million mark. And that's a big number. And so we're definitely a global company, and we have global capabilities. We're in more than a dozen local languages for our member experience. And we have sales teams in a number of different countries globally. So the short answer to the question of is this U.S.-centric or global is, the content I shared with you today, consider it to be global. I don't think I shared anything that was U.S.-specific. Some of the case studies were U.S.-specific, but some of them were also from global companies. So we're definitely global, and if you have needs outside the U.S., then LinkedIn is well positioned to address them. Okay. Let's see. Other questions? Time for one more. So is a showcase page an extra feature to purchase for a business account? The answer here is no, it is not an extra feature with any cost. So you can build a showcase page from a company page. So the only precondition to having a showcase page is having a company page first. And there's no cost to it. So it's totally free. So with that, good time to wrap. And I want to thank everyone again. I know it's late in the year. Everyone's trying to wrap Q4, wrap up 2014, head into the holidays. And I truly appreciate everyone joining, and especially all the engagement on the WebEx, all the questions. I'm sorry I could not get to all of them. But again, thank you very much for spending the time with us this morning. And I wish everyone happy holidays.